Hey everybody, it's the dude here to bring you another video. For the second week in a row, we have been away from the majority of our main characters. We haven't been back to Alexandria this season, and we haven't seen Jesus in the Hilltop in like 8 episodes. But still, 3 episodes into Season 7 and we have already seen 2 new communities. The second being the Sanctuary, home of the Saviors, where Daryl was taken after he racked Negan across the face in the season premiere. Daryl hasn't actually managed to have a line since he left Glenn and Michonne in the woods in the episode before the season finale, with the whole, I'm going to see me. You have to go home. Okay. Let's see how long it takes him to get a line in this one. Here is my review and analysis of Season 7, Episode 3 of The Walking Dead. Now, the title The Cell is in reference to the cell that Daryl is kept in throughout most of the episode. It also makes me think of the cell Morgan built. Here, this cell is being used for the same reason. Negan doesn't want to kill Daryl. Episode 1 was about breaking Rick. This episode is about breaking Daryl. We start off with a sort of montage set to very cheerful music, giving us the day-to-day life of Dwight. He's watching Who's the Boss, ironic because his character's inner struggle is wanting to be his own man, not to be under the thumb of Negan. Is Dwight acting for Negan as Negan, or for himself? Who is the boss? We see him playing a drinking game with a woman, so he obviously does pretty well for himself. We see Dwight whittling these small wooden figurines. He had one in his pocket when he first met Daryl last season, and Daryl took it in exchange for the meds. Dwight seems to have made quite a hobby out of it. Interestingly enough, in the comics, Carl carves wooden figurines. I won't jump the gun and say Dwight will become such a good guy that he would develop such a relationship with Carl as to where Carl would get this hobby from Dwight, but maybe. Next, in what looks like a big factory room, Dwight cuts in line for bread. In the books, they actually produce bread at Alexandria. In the background, we see a red-headed man try to purchase something. He seems to not have enough points, so he offers his shirt. The guy rejects it, and as a last-ditch effort, he tries to just take some of the food before getting the shit beat out of him. This gives us our first look at the clear division of class in the Sanctuary. Some people work for points, others, like Dwight, work for Negan and get whatever they want, like TVs and alcohol and free food. Dwight makes note of who this red-headed guy is and where he lives. He marks number 39 on a little piece of paper. Next we see him in a roughly partitioned living area marked number 39. This must be where the red-headed man lived. We can see that this is his family because of the red-headed teenager and the pregnant wife. With the father out of the picture, Dwight raids his stuff and comes up with some mustard and pickles for a sandwich. Next, he grabs some tomatoes and lettuce from a very nervous gardener. Then, when he's getting some eggs, we get our first little bit of Negan for the episode. Negan strolls on through, and everyone drops to the ground and kneels with their head down. When the sandwich is done, the cheerful montage music cuts out to the sound of zombies on the fence. Outside of the Sanctuary, there are nearly 100 zombies, along with a couple living people who are in white jumpsuits with orange letters spray painted on their chest, similar to how they marked the guy that they hung in the season finale. This serves as a punishment for the men and a scare tactic to anyone who approaches the Sanctuary from the outside. I think the letters on their chest spell fear, though there is an S, so it could be fears. It's only a guess, but it could be a reference to the name of the comic book arc that Negan is introduced in, Something to Fear. Dwight focuses on one zombie, stuck on a pole. Seeing as how we learned that the fence is used as a source of punishment, it's more than possible that Dwight actually knew this person. Next we see Dwight's second sandwich of the day, one filled with only dog food, one meant for Daryl. We first see Daryl appear out of total darkness when the cell door opens. He's naked, filthy. He takes the food like a whipped animal. He bites into the dog food burger as Dwight closes the door, leaving him in complete darkness. Whoa. No lines for Daryl yet, but not only does he feel so guilty about Glenn's death, but he has to go through all this? After the opening credits and a commercial break, we get almost a second start to the episode. This time giving us a montage of Daryl's day-to-day set to similarly cheerful music. We're on easy street, and it feels so sweet. 'Cause the world is but a treat when you're on easy street. Come on, we're on easy street. And it feels so sweet. And the world is but a treat when you're on easy street. Ugh, this music. All day long, Daryl sits in the darkness, waits for his food, gets his food, and is tortured with this song. We see the bandage from the gunshot wound Dwight gave him at the end of last season. Then he almost falls asleep before the music picks up again. It's horrible to deprive him from sleep like this, but I guess the goal is to break him. And from the audience's perspective, we feel like he's already had enough. Next time Dwight shows up, he throws Daryl some clothes, which he eagerly puts on. The time after that, Dwight takes Daryl out of the cell, barefoot, and through the halls of the sanctuary. We now see that Daryl is wearing one of those white jumpsuits, and he has a big A spray painted on the front of his chest. Coincidentally, A is also how the Terminus people marked the train car that Rick's group was kept in, and how they marked the church. He spots some janitors and then catches a brief glimpse at a cozy little room before getting pushed on by Dwight. Dwight takes Daryl to see Carson, a doctor who is currently seeing to Sherry, the girl who was with Dwight in the woods last season. They exchange some awkward pleasantries before she recognizes Daryl? Don't talk to him. Dwight pushes Daryl forward when he notices a pregnancy test on the counter. He turns to Sherry. She says, "It's negative." He says, "Well, maybe next time." Later we learn that Sherry is actually married to Negan. Does Dwight think Negan actually wants to get Sherry pregnant, or is he just being a dick? I'm asking because having a lot of little Negans running around is kind of a big deal. Dr. Carson says, "Sorry, still getting used to being my own assistant." That's interesting. Don't we already have a Dr. Carson? Yeah, Dr. Harlan Carson. He's the one Rick and the gang save on their way to the hilltop. The one that they're going to see to save Maggie in the season finale. There's no way it's a coincidence that they have the same name. Most likely they're brothers. And with Negan wanting to take half of everyone's shit, it makes sense that if the hilltop had 2 doctors, he would take one. As they're making their way back to Daryl's cell, Negan turns the corner and Dwight forces Daryl to kneel. Negan's like, "Ha ha ha, Dwighty boy." He looks to the janitors. "I need to talk to my associate for a minute." "Go about your business." Turns to the fat guy behind him. "Except for you. You stand right there." Dwight takes Daryl and sits him down, and the fat guy points a gun at him, while Dwight goes to talk to Negan. Just for a moment, Daryl gets a look at this room, and it seems that even though on the surface he may deny it, that this is something of the life he wants. Dwight returns from the briefest of chats with Negan, and takes Daryl to the fences, where a fresh zombie has been added, the red-headed man from the opening. He grabs Daryl and pushes him up against the fence. "That's you, asshole. Unless you're smart, your choice. You could be like them, or me, or them." That is a double line. You know, when a character says a line once and then says it again with different inflection for more emphasis. This one gets the double line tally to double digits. I got a feeling that Negan told Dwight to take Daryl here to try to get it through to him what his options are. Dwight seemed to think that the choice he made was the only choice he could make. After a commercial break, Dwight throws Daryl back into his cell. "Make it easy on yourself." And finally, we get our first Daryl line of the season. "I ain't never gonna kneel." "Yeah, I said that too." "Yeah, no. See, that's the thing, man. You don't. But you're gonna." Then Daryl starts to kick the door and try to get out, which is a little strange to me. I feel like that would have been the first thing that Daryl did when he got there, and there's really no way that he could still think that he could get out. But this is all really just used as a transition to the Dwight and Negan scene. "He is going apeshit, and you are hustling. It's working. It's working slow, but hey man, some people are harder to break than others." Dwight's like, "Yeah, he's close. Since you're doing such an awesome job, you want to have a little blast from the past with you-know-who?" And Dwight just stares at him. "I'm kidding, man. Lighten up. Pick whoever you want, as long as she says yes." So this is cluing us into the fact that Negan is now married to Dwight's ex-wife. He's offering him a chance to sleep with her again. And this is also a hint to the idea that Negan doesn't approve of rape, with the whole, "as long as she says yes." Oh, crap. Are you okay down there? Your penis? I mean, that guy humped it. I'm fine. and I'm gonna pass. And I'm cool. Huh. Are you cool though, Dwight? I mean, I just said it's happy hour at the Pussy Bar and Dwight eats for free. And you're telling me no. Is that cool? Dwight's like, I haven't finished the job. I haven't earned it yet. Right? What the hell are you talking about? You earn what you take. Just then they get a call on the radio saying that they gotta grab and go. Apparently somebody stole some goods and tried to escape from the sanctuary. Dwight offers to go, and Negan says, that is grunt work. Why don't you have Fat Joey do it? Fat Joey, I'm assuming, is this guy? God knows he needs the exercise. You don't have to do it, Dwight. Right there, Negan is testing Dwight. If he really wants to earn it, like he says he does, he'll take the grunt work, even when Negan says he doesn't have to. And that's what Dwight does. And Dwight's like, oh, I like to do it. Then oddly, Negan presses his head up against Dwight's. This is a pretty intimate and trusting thing for him to do, especially when he teases Dwight with, good boy. So Dwight sets off on his motorcycle after this runaway. He eventually stops when he gets to this overpass. Beneath it, there is a turned-over car and a bunch of dead zombies. Back in Daryl's cell, Fat Joey shows up with the dog food burger, and when he closes the door, he leaves it unlocked. Ooh, this moment. I could just feel that it was a setup as soon as it happened. No, Daryl, don't do it, it's a trap! But that's not Daryl. He tests the door, pushes it open, and then heads out into the hallway. Back at the overpass, Dwight's bike gets caught up in some zombie guts. It looks like a car drove through the concrete barrier and landed on the ground below. Now, zombies have been falling over to the side too. When one does, Dwight gets startled and then swarmed, but manages to shoot his way out. Back in the hallway, Daryl is creeping along when Sherry shows up behind him. Go back. You know I did. Everything he's done to you, there is always more. We're obviously supposed to trust her, and we're supposed to think that Fat Joey is the only one that Negan sent to set up Daryl. But honestly, I think Negan sent Sherry to do all this too. She is doing whatever it takes to survive in this world, just like Dwight's doing. So for some reason, I think Negan wants Daryl to get close to Sherry and trust her. Maybe to test him or teach him a lesson that you can't touch one of Negan's girls. Either way, Daryl doesn't listen. He heads out into a courtyard where he's cornered by a bunch of guys and Negan. Are we pissing our pants yet? This is a reference to the first line Negan ever had as soon as he stepped out of the RV in the season finale. Negan points to one of his men. Who are you? And Fat Joey says, Negan. Points behind him. Who are you? Negan. Who are you? They all say, Negan. Now this has been brought up before. In the episode last season when Carol and Maggie were captured by the Saviors, one of the women says, we are all Negan, and then the guy that Rick captured tells Rick that he's Negan before getting wasted. In the comics, when we see the bikers, the leader says, we are all Negan. He speaks through us, and we for him. I don't know why I use that voice. That's just the voice I read it in 5 years ago when it came out, and it stuck. You see that? I am everywhere. And this was your shot to prove to me that that fundamental fact was sinking in, and you failed. Negan jabbed Lucille down at Daryl's feet. Now, Dwight gave you some options. I don't think you get it yet, so I'm gonna break it down for you. You got 3 choices. 1, you wind up on the spike, and you work for me as a dead man. That must be what fence duty is called, winding up on the spike. 2, you get out of your cell and you work for points, but you're gonna wish you were dead. Or 3, you work for me. You get yourself a new pair of shoes, and you live like a king. Choice seems pretty obvious. You should know, there is no door number 4. This is the only way. Screw it. Wow. You don't scare easy. I love that. But Lucille, she finds it to be disrespectful. Lucky for you, she's not feeling too thirsty today. But I am. So, I'm gonna go get me a drink. He walks away and Negan starts to beat Daryl up. Damn, I love Jeffrey D. Morgan's Negan. Again, he's not trying to kill Daryl. He wants to use him. We all know how useful Daryl is, and I think Negan sees that too. Back in his cell looking considerably better than I thought he would after getting beaten up by 8 Negans, but that's okay. Sherry shows up to share her feelings through the door. Back in the woods, after we took your stuff, you said that we would be sorry. I am. I tend to believe that Dwight and Sherry are pretty genuine people, but I don't think they're both gonna turn out to be good. I think right now we're supposed to think that Sherry is the cool one and Dwight is the dick, but I think it's the other way around. Back on the road, Dwight has caught up with the runaway man. It's the same guy who Dwight got eggs from in the first scene. Dwight says that the guy is going back to the sanctuary because he owes, and now he owes even more. The guy just wants to leave and be out of this life, but Dwight tells him that everything is his, or will be. Then the guy gets on his knees and says, "Dwight, this is the last time I'm gonna kneel." Dwight tells him to get up, that he's gonna put everyone he's ever known on the fence if he doesn't get up, and he's gonna dig up his dead wife and feed her to the crows. You feel that? He's like, "Alright, D, you win," and he keeps walking. But then when his back turns, Dwight raises his gun and shoots him. This shows us that Dwight doesn't necessarily buy into all this bullshit. Maybe deep down he knew that this guy was better off dead. When he gets back to the sanctuary, he runs into Sherry, who seems to be always out and about. She's smoking a cigarette in the stairwell. It's a very quiet, intimate scene. Dwight asks for a cigarette, and she gives him one, which I can assume costs a lot of points. Probably not for her, because she's one of Negan's wives. But usually, cigarettes are probably pretty expensive. After a moment, Dwight asks, "He good to you?" And she's like, "Yeah." "Are you happy?" "Yeah. We did the right thing. It's a hell of a lot better than being dead." And she's like, "Yeah." Okay, so it's clear that these two care about each other, and that seems to be why they took the deal from Negan in the first place. She would rather be married to Negan than have Dwight die, and he would rather work for Negan and have a burned face than see Sherry die. But it's still clear that Dwight is careful to keep his distance. He doesn't want to get in any trouble with Negan. You know, nothing too friendly, but it's clear that he does care. I still wonder if Sherry isn't sitting in this staircase waiting for Dwight because Negan told her to. Is he still testing Dwight? Back in Daryl's cell, the music stops and Dwight comes in to hand Daryl his food, but Daryl won't take it. He says, "Eat." When Daryl doesn't, he goes, "You got your friend killed. I got Tina killed. And don't pretend like you don't know the score." The score? So Dwight had to be punished for letting Tina die. But Daryl, because Abe had already died and he was the reason Negan had to kill another person, giving him one less person to work for him. So Daryl has to sit in this cell forever? It's a pretty rough score. Daryl throws the food at him. Dwight leans down. "You should be dead. But Negan's taking a shine to you. You're lucky. Don't forget it." He reaches in his pocket and takes out the Polaroid picture of Glenn that was taken after he got killed and sticks it on the wall and says, "Bon appetit," and he leaves. Daryl at first does nothing, but then he looks at the picture, sees what it is, rips it off the wall and throws it on the ground. But just for a second, he needs to see. He turns it over. Just then, Dwight plays a different song, a song about crying, and Daryl breaks down. Outside, Dwight is listening to Daryl cry. He thinks that he's gotten the job done. He's broken Daryl. And damn, this is so sad. It's good to see Daryl cry about this. So plain to see the guilt on his face, and the audience can feel it too. I imagine it wasn't the most difficult place for Norman Reedus to get to. He misses his friend Stephen Yeun. The emotions are already there, and it's a beautiful moment. The next morning, Dwight wakes him up and takes him to Negan, who is sitting comfortably in the room that Daryl has gotten glimpses of throughout the episode. Negan says he looks awful, but they'll get Dr. Carson to fix him up. He offers him some water, but looks and is like, "Oh, I forgot. Your mouth's all puffed up like a baboon's ass. Need a straw? D, get him a straw. What's wrong with you? See that guy? He hustles. I like hustle. But believe it or not, things weren't always cool between us. You see, D here, he worked for points. He and his super hot wife, and her super hot sister. But you see, sis, she needed meds, and that shit is hard to scavenge, so it costs more. Sis fell behind on points, so I asked her to marry me. I told her I would take care of her in sickness and in health, blah blah blah, 'cause I am a stand-up guy. She tells me that she's gonna think about it. Next thing you know, Dwighty boy here stole all the medication, took off with his super hot wife, and my super hot, maybe soon-to-be fiancé. So I have to send my guys after him, because I can't let something like that stand. There are rules. Cost me an arm and a leg going after him. Literally, remember when the Saviors were after Dwight, one of their men actually loses an arm, and you know what? Dwighty boy, he still got away. But here's the thing. D, he saw the light. He manned up. He came back. He asked for my forgiveness. I like that. Make me take notice. But Lucille, well, you know how she is. She is a stickler for the rules. So Dwight, he begged me not to kill Sherry, which I thought was kind of cute, so I was just gonna kill him. But then Sherry says that she will marry me if I let Dwight live. And when you think about it, it's a pretty screwed up deal, because I was just gonna marry her sister until she wound up dead, but Sherry is super hot. Anyways, it was a start, but it wasn't enough. So Dwight, he got the iron. The iron? Oh, you mean this iron in the opening credits? Yeah, it looks like we finally know how Dwight got his face burned. In the comics, it actually causes his eyelid to completely be removed, so he constantly has to put a little drop of Clear Eyes in. Obviously for the show, that didn't work, because the actor still has a visible eyelid, so that's okay, but it was still a nice little character trait that I think they've gotten rid of. And then I married his super hot wife. Ex-wife. And then after all that, he still got on board. And now look at him. Bow! One of my top guys! And we are totally cool. Ha! No. Point being, I think you can be that guy. I think you are ready to be that guy. Now look around here. This, well, it can all be yours. All you gotta do is answer one simple question. Who are you? What, has the cat got your tongue? You're just overwhelmed by the awesomeness of this? I'm gonna ask you one more time. Who are you? Oh, that's a pretty awesome double line. Can Daryl do it? Can he give up everything that he's built since the apocalypse started? I mean, he was a different person back then, and he's changed so much. Can he give up all of that and be Negan? The person who killed Glenn and Abraham. The person who's taking over the lives of all the people he cares about. No, he can't. He says, Daryl. Dwight tries to stop him. This is the only... It's cool, D. He made his choice. Ain't my problem if he made a dumbass choice. Whew, Daryl gets thrown back into his cell. Dwight says, you're gonna either end up in that room or out on that fence. As he's about to leave, Daryl speaks up. I get why you did it, why you took it. You were thinking about someone else. That's why I can't. Who could Daryl be thinking of? He could be thinking of everyone. He could be thinking about Carol or Rosita. He could be thinking about Maggie. He could just be thinking about Glenn. Maybe he just can't be the man who killed Glenn. Especially when he feels that way already. And this is the first moment of understanding between Daryl and Dwight. Then Dwight goes out to the fence and looks at the zombies, and he sees the egg guy who ran away, who Dwight shot. I guess he dragged his body all the way back to the sanctuary? Just like in the beginning, Dwight is looking at someone who he knows. Will he let that become Daryl? That's the million-dollar question for the episode. What is going to happen to Daryl? That's when the episode ends, and honestly, I was a little shocked. I felt like, oh, what? I feel like we have 10 more minutes left. Isn't Daryl supposed to get punished? Is he going to get burned? Is he going to get put on the fence? What's going to happen? But they leave it. They leave us in suspense. So that has a number of implications on its own. Next episode, Negan's going to show up at Alexandria for his first pickup. At that point, will he have already punished Daryl? Or will he threaten to punish Daryl in case Rick acts up a little bit? So in the show here, we've been introduced to the Sanctuary through the eyes of Dwight and Daryl, and I really liked it. In the comics, the first time we see the Sanctuary is through the eyes of Carl. Now, I'll talk about this in the least spoilery way as possible, but basically, Carl, similar to Daryl, gets in trouble and gets taken captive by Negan. He's in need of punishment and under Negan's control. And even though we've gotten the introduction to the Sanctuary, I still really hope that this happens. I think in episode 1, they were hinting at a future relationship between Negan and Carl. If Carl was to get to the Sanctuary, this would give him an opportunity to, 1, meet Dwight and maybe see him whittle a little bit, and then maybe he'll see Daryl get punished. Fuck, maybe they will burn Daryl's face. I mean, in this episode after he got beaten up, they really didn't put a bunch of bloody makeup on him for that, so I find it hard to imagine that they're gonna give Daryl a prosthetic for the rest of the series, but maybe. If Carl was in the mix, this would also give us a different view of the Sanctuary. In this episode, we only saw Negan when Daryl or Dwight did, but if Carl was there, Negan would keep Carl close to him. He wouldn't throw him in a cell. We would get to see how Negan spends his day-to-day, and I think that is the part of this episode that we really missed. One last note, anybody notice that Simon wasn't there? I'll call this a spoiler, but really it comes from the episode descriptions, one of which says that Jesus has to defend the hilltop from an attack from the Saviors led by Simon. Negan found out that the Hilltop made a deal with Rick's group, and now they have to be punished. In the comics, when the whole Negan scene happens, the people at Alexandria actually get attacked by Dwight. And when Rick comes back, he's like, oh no, what happened? Andrea, who's alive, killed all of the Saviors and took Dwight captive. But Rick, who has just experienced Glenn's death and wants to keep the peace between Negan, lets Dwight go, telling all of his people that no, we're going to be on Negan's side. But secretly, he sends Jesus after him. So here's what I think's gonna happen. I think Simon will attack the Hilltop after Maggie and Sasha have already made their way there. The Hilltop will win, and Simon will get captured. And Maggie, even though she hates the Saviors so much, is going to release Simon, pretending that everything is okay, and send Jesus after him. I think as soon as we see Maggie next, she's going to be a leader, and she's going to be making those types of decisions. And then Simon will be on his way back to the sanctuary, Jesus will be following, maybe Carl and Daryl are there, and everything will come together and it'll be crazy. This episode had amazing stuff. Austin Emilio, the actor who plays Dwight, is a fantastic addition to the cast. Negan was prime time as usual, and we got to focus on Daryl as he copes with the loss of Glenn. All in all, I am super pleased with the first 3 episodes of the show, and I literally can't wait until the next one. It's going to be 90 minutes with all of our characters and Negan in Alexandria. So I will see you back here next week for a most likely extra long review and analysis of episode 4. That's all for me. Please let me know what you thought of the episode down in the comments section. Remember to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and watch it again. This has been The Dude. See ya.